empty hearts and neon lights. They're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver. No more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar. Bring me back to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. La 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 la, oh, oh. Get me out of broken hearts and starting fights, turning truth to lies. Gotta get up, stop wasting time. Yeah, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver. No more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar. Bring me back to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. Oh,
All right, all right, all right. How's everybody doing? Happy Sunday evening to everybody. My name is 12 Gauge. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time here, thank you for being here and giving this channel a chance to entertain you with the true crime commentary and the information that I give out. If you're a returning person, thank you for continuing to show up and spend your evening with me as I give the information about true crime and the affiliates of alternative things that happen within the community of true crime and criminal activity. So let me say hello to the chat really quick. We have Rondi, Nikki, Paula, Latina, and anybody else who comes into the chat. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And those of you that are listening that don't chat, thank you so much for being here. Tonight, we're going to talk about a sensitive topic that is highly controversial in a lot of areas, but it needs to be spoke on. You know, I'm going to try to make it as clean as possible, but like I've spoke before, when we talk about true crime, It's never pretty. It's never pretty. So do understand that you're coming into a live, that there's going to be some things spoken on that not necessarily the friendliest topic to discuss. So um, if you do decide to chat, please be classy and courteous to the mods. If they ask you to curtail a little bit of your behavior or you're getting a little out there, they will give you a warning and continue to monitor the chat. So please be respectful to them. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. Here we go. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of background information on where the human trafficking is the highest. So you look at your wherever you live, and you can tell the high hotspots of human trafficking. So look at these areas of the U.S. You know, look at the East Coast. It is saturated with the orange, so that means the highest levels. And obviously, the cooler the colors get, that the level that the trafficking demonstrates. So if you're not in the U.S., I do need to get a map of other countries because I do understand that I have people that are not from the U.S. So um, this was the first one I saw, so that's why I chose it. So if you look at Tennessee, if you don't know where Tennessee is, if you can see my mouse, it is right here. I believe this is Tennessee right here. If it isn't this one, it's definitely this one. Because I know this is Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia. So I believe Tennessee's right here. It's one of these. But look how saturated in red it is. And look at the East Coast, New York, and all up along the East Coast. And look at Florida. Look at Texas. Look at California and along the West Coast. We do follow a case out of this state right here, which is called Idaho. And this is where it is right here in this area. So there's not a lot of human trafficking in that area. This is Montana, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, Michigan. I believe this is Ohio, and so on and so on. So, if you look at that map, it's very descriptive of the human trafficking. Um, so wherever you're at, take a look at that map and be very mindful. Be very mindful. Um, we have people in these chat that are in all over the U.S. and a lot of times these type of things don't get spoken about like on a daily basis. Like, okay, this is a high trafficking area. Y'all need to be careful out there. You need to be careful. It's never discussed like that. It's you just find out through things like this. So I wanted to show that for that reason, to give you some knowledge about the higher trafficking areas. And let me show you what human trafficking is, because for a lot of people they have no understanding of what really human trafficking is. I hate this the StreamYard that it takes you back to the original thing. I'm gonna get off cam because I don't feel like being on cam tonight. So let me read these facts to you. It says human traffickers use America's transportation system to facilitate unmanageable crimes. Report what you see. So it says every year since 2010, the President of the U.S. has designated January as National Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Since that time, the month has become a time to raise awareness about how we can all prevent this crime by learning how to identify and report human trafficking. This year, we're shining a light on labor trafficking, a type of human trafficking in which someone is made to work through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. Many people primarily think of sex trafficking as the driving force behind the victimization of an estimated tens of thousands of people in the United States each year. Each year, tens of thousands of people are sex trafficked. But research indicates that 1 in 10 victims of human trafficking in 2021 were subjected to labor trafficking. The International Labor Organization estimates that 51 billion is generated in illegal profits from forced economic exploitation in domestic work, agriculture, and other economic activities. So this is another form of human trafficking because we think about the sex workers, okay? So this is another thing to look at, and I know you see it all the time. You can go to Home Depot on any day and you could see Lowe's or any of those areas, and you could see a vehicle dropping off or picking up individuals at other vehicles or trucks. Chatter about a commercial company or sale on the CB radio. Workers seem to be deferring to another person before giving information, avoid eye contact, being told not to speak, or appearing coached on what to say. Worker is not free to leave the premises. The worker lives at the business. These are massage parlors, sometimes Chinese restaurants, sometimes, things of that nature that have those types of things going on. Workers transported to the location by the owner or manager, and all workers arrive and leave at the same time. Worker has excessively long hours or is always available on demand. A person exhibiting signs of physical or emotional distress, abuse, or branding tattoos. This is the same thing with sex workers. I mean, they could have branding tattoos, and you're going to see in a video tonight that I'm going to show about one particular person that identifies her tattoos as being branded by the traffickers. So it's very, very right under our noses. But what's sad is sometimes you don't know what to look for. How you can help. You know what I mean? Just because one of these signs is present does not necessarily mean an individual is being trafficked. So use your discretion and trust your gut when reporting an instance of human trafficking. So it says if you suspect someone is being trafficked, do not confront a suspected trafficker or victim. Instead, dial 911. If someone is in immediate danger, call toll free 24/7 National Human Trafficking Hotline 1 888 373 7888 or text help or info to 233-722. That's how you can help. Report what you see and always say something. We don't want to get involved because we think that people are going to retaliate. We're going to become a target ourselves. You can do it discreetly. You don't have to go into superhero mode. You know what I mean? So here are the indicators. I know you probably can't see it because it's small, but here are the indicators of human trafficking. So I'm going to read them to you. And the links, I'm going to put them below in the description box, okay? The indicators of human trafficking. Recognizing key indicators of human trafficking is the first step in identifying victims that can help save a life. Here are some common indicators to help recognize human trafficking. Does the person appear disconnected from their family, friends, community, organizations, or house of worship? Has a child stopped attending school? This is one of the areas that we look at whenever we're looking at juveniles. The truancy, what are they doing? What are they a part of? Are they being exploited by somebody older? Are they being exploited in the home? Has the person had a sudden or dramatic change in behavior? Is a juvenile engaged in commercial sex acts? Is the person disorientated or confused or showing signs of mental or physical abuse? Does the person have bruises in various stages of healing? Is the person fearful, timid, or submissive? Does the person show signs of having been denied food, water, sleep, or medical care? Is the person often in the company of someone to which he or she defers, or someone who seems to be in control of the situation? Example, where to go or who to talk to. Does the person appear to be coached on what they say? Is the person living in unsuitable conditions? Does the person lack personal possessions and appear not to have a stable living situation? Does the person have freedom of movement? Can the person freely leave where they live? Are there unreasonable security measures? Just like everything else, not all indicators listed above are present in every human trafficking situation. And the presence of absence of any of these indicators is not necessarily proof of human trafficking. So you have to use your discretion. But to not say anything on the air of being fearful that it might not be, it's very it's very detrimental to somebody's safety, especially in those hotspots that I showed you. If you live in any of those hotspots, you need to look a little closer at some of your surroundings. I'm not asking you to be a superhero or policing your environment, but you know what? You could save somebody's life if you do say something. So that's totally up to you. So those are some of the signs to look at whenever somebody is potentially being trafficked. And now I'm going to show you a video so that you can get insight on somebody's story. This is called Escaping the Blade. And before I begin, do y'all have any questions on what I presented right there? Hi, Carla. Hi, Twizzle. Hi, Christy. Hi, Heather. As y'all can tell, that my message notification is going off. So let's watch this video, and we'll be sure to um we'll take any kind of questions after the video. I will be stopping it in periodic places so that I don't get striked for copyright. Okay, so here we go.
Your only option is death or to go do what you're supposed to do.
California is a hotbed for human trafficking.
It's frustrating for all of us in the Criminal Justice Center, for me, for law enforcement that works very hard on these cases, but it's most frustrating for the victims.
Right now, what we're doing is not working, and young girls are being impacted.
Thanks for everybody for coming. This was kind of a quick one that we threw together. We're going to be focusing on the Stockton Boulevard corridor today. Our goal today is kind of max enforcement.
It's a growing crime.
Imagine a McDonald's drive-thru, and that's what this parking lot was. It would be bumper-to-bumper traffic.
And it's happening right in front of your eyes.
It's a different world, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yet most people don't even notice.
I wasn't fully aware of what was going on right in front of my face.
Women and girls sold for sex.
Dropped off by a vehicle. She got out. She's in see-through fishnets. 19.
I was 13 when I was 12.
18.
You might think that they're working alone, but they're actually being watched.
I couldn't come home unless I had $1,000 that night.
They're captors.
They think that the local law enforcement is a joke.
The laws do not work. The only person the law benefits is a trafficker.
Hey, stay in your car. Stay in your car.
Simply walking free.
The law has no teeth. Sacramento is a hub for sex trafficking. 47th and Stockton Boulevard right here.
Got dropped off at the Blade. A Blade.
You literally have to run. And if you have a problem with law enforcement, then who the hell's going to help you?
Or the other part doing one of these operations.
Undercover detectives hit the ground running.
My understanding is we're chasing everything that runs. We're going after everything. So be as aggressive as you want, and you know how, and we'll smash.
Into the not so underground world of commercial sex, happening along a 4-mile stretch that cuts right through the heart of Sacramento County.
So a blade is considered like a roadway or a public roadway. The way at least we phrase it is public roadway commonly utilized for commercial sex work. Stockton Boulevard being one of them. Usually we see it between Stockton Boulevard. It's usually about Fruit Ridge to Elsie.
Sacramento is a sex trafficking hotspot.
That's me. Okay, we're pulling up right now.
Why are you out here dressed in fishnets with yourself completely exposed with 3 condoms?
Just walking.
You're just walking like that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm talking about your mind frame as to why you would be out here.
I'm not going to jail. I don't need to work here.
Okay.
It's clear she's working and she's not willing to cooperate with us. She doesn't want any resources and she wants to deny any involvement with a potential trafficker. Is that your ride, the guys that are caught over there?
I didn't come here with anyone.
Okay, that's fine then.
We are going to be seizing your phone. Okay.
You can't go through it though.
I'm going to write a search warrant into it, and then I'll go through it.
If you are being trafficked, we want to find out who it is so we can basically make them seek justice.
And for the sheriff's office, even as their enforcement grows,
like it literally, we'll give it another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and we will all be out of the parking lot, and they will all come back.
So does their frustration.
We have young girls that are 12 and 14 years old, whether it's winter or summer, they're wearing a bra and pants.
12 and 13 years old. You know, money is an awful motivator for people to exploit other people, to not care about people's well-being or safety. You know, it's an awful motivator to put these young individual lives at risk. Because think about what they're told, what they're promised, what they're threatened with. You know, some of these girls are runaways. Some of them have been snatched up in another area of the country. Some of them have been brought in from other countries, smuggled in, and forced to work in these environments. You know, it's tragic. I mean, to think that you would find young women being disposed of on these streets like trash. Use them up, throw them away. And it's sad. A lot of these murders happen because there's either the people that are using them for sex or the ones that are using them for money. Something happens and they're no longer useful, so they dispose of them and go find somebody else.
And sometimes just panties are nothing.
And one more thing I want to say is not only women are trafficked, boys are trafficked as well.
Where in America is that acceptable? Why is it okay here in California?
This gentleman right here just tried to contact the sex worker. She walked away from the car.
So we're going to do a vehicle stop on this car.
Everybody wants the trafficker. That is a golden goose. You get them, but those arrests are few and far in between. And that's really the issue we want to deal with. We want to help the girls. And a lot of the girls are afraid to get out of it. If they get out of it, they go right back into it because these traffickers have so much influence over the girls. And they're afraid.
Occupied. Hey, stay in your car. Stay in your car. Hands.
There's nothing that stands out about this unassuming building in Sacramento's Oak Park.
If you were to drive by, you'd have no idea the impact that we're having on the community and how many lives are changed in this very building.
But this is Sawan Vaden's second home.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And it's here where she and her staff are making a world of difference.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Vaden is the executive director of Community Against Sexual Harm, better known as CASH, a nonprofit created to help victims of sex trafficking.
Any person, woman or person who identifies as a woman that has experience in exploitation at any point in their lives can receive services here.
CASH offers warm clothing, medical checkups, and childcare.
About 20 people have already accessed the clothes closet for the kids.
And on any given day, Vaden never knows who will walk through the door.
This first one is my very first mugshot at 18 years of age. I just picked out some that just showed the progression of drugs and alcohol.
Women arrive usually in the darkest of places.
I had just had a baby after high school.
Often turning to prostitution as a last resort.
And I was just in that space of like survival desperation for me and my son.
Others picked up right off the street.
I remember I used to walk to school off Antelope Road. I know now what that means. There was always condoms over that damn overpass. I went to Mesa Verde. I went to Grand Oaks Elementary. Almost every day, someone would try to pull over and ask us if we wanted a ride. And that's on Antelope Road.
How big of a problem is it in this region, this area?
I went all these places and never really noticed what was going on. And I think that's the scary part about it, is because if you don't know, you don't know.
And I know it's any age. It's super prevalent.
And Heather, you brought up an interesting situation there. You know, there are a lot of high-ranking officials that are tied to all this human trafficking stuff. I mean, there are dirty officers that get convicted to, for them to, let's say you don't want a ticket, then let me take you around the corner and you do what you need to do to not get a ticket. Or even if they know that there's women on the street that are working, you don't want to be arrested. What are you going to do for me? Or, they just demand certain things. And they know that they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable. And they take advantage of that vulnerability, which is not right. Just because you have a badge does not give you the right to break the law.
In Sacramento, especially when I sold sex in the early 2000s here on Broadway, it was like what sticks out is like the sisterhood, so to speak, like don't date the guy in the green truck because they did this to me or that to me, or being able to share that with the next woman and then her going in that truck and then not coming back. That's what sticks out to me, is the friends that I've lost.
A lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of them.
All these years later, little has changed. CASH estimates between 2015 and 2020, there were 13,000 victims trafficked for sex in Sacramento County alone.
I had attempted a few times to escape.
That includes Emily Sanders, who lived through a 3-year nightmare. A man she loved forced her to sell sex.
When he abandoned me out on the street when I was 8.5 months pregnant, he dropped me off. In fact, we'll be
I believe, passing by the car wash in which he dropped me off at, and I called 911.
It was only after Sanders sought support she too learned she was a trafficking victim.
What people think of is I'm in chains. You see the pictures, help me, a woman crying in a corner. So I didn't know what it was defined as. And what I could just define is that I was in love with somebody who said we were going to do this temporarily, but now it's a must. There's certain rules and things on the street that people don't realize. You're not allowed to look at other pimps. You're not allowed to conversate with other pimps. And you better be doing exactly what your pimp knows you're doing. It's a scary and sad game that's being played out there on the streets right now.
It's a problem everyone wants to fix, but not everyone agrees on how.
We introduced SB 14, made it a serious felony, so it would be a strikeable offense for those that sell minors 0 to 17 for sex.
A key committee in the state assembly is facing intense scrutiny tonight for blocking a bill that would have prevented child sex traffickers from being released from prison.
Last year, that battle was on full display.
And there was public outrage. There was serious political blowback.
State Senator Shannon Grove proposed selling a child for sex become a serious felony and a strikeable offense. Seemed like a sure thing.
If you were to ask Californians, Democrat, Republican, or Independent, if sex trafficking a minor should be a serious felony in the state of California, I can pretty much guarantee that almost everyone would say yes.
It turned out.
How could it not be a serious crime? I mean, is this another situation where we're not looking at the problem, but we're looking at the issues surrounding the problem? Because a lot of times that's what it seems like. Most cases, people just look at the insinuating issues surrounding the bigger problem, and they don't focus on the problem. They focus on the other issues. Is it the parents? Is it the schools? Is it the educators? Is it this? Is it that? Instead of identifying what the real problem is. How are you going to get to the root? Because without getting to the root, all you're doing is just temporarily slowing it down, but it speeds up right again, just like drug addiction, drug dealing, all that.
The bill was anything but sure.
Joan Sawyer, not voting. Alanis. Bonta, Brian. Brian not voting. Lackey.
Proudly aye.
Lackey, aye. Ortega. Ortega not voting. Santiago. Saber not voting.
How can it be controversial that we want to hold sex traffickers accountable for trafficking our children?
I don't think you realize you may have also opened up a can of worms when it comes to people getting out sooner than they should.
The sex trafficking and kidnapping and rape, how long was he in prison?
2 years. He got right back out, continued calling me. He literally called my messenger 50 times straight without giving me the break, like brr, brr, brr.
It's been 3 years since Alexis King was forced to sell her body for sex, though it still follows her around today.
I took the bus here, and at the bus stop, I had 3 guys pull over. Every single one of them wanted a date. It's so easy for it to never leave you, because it's always gonna be there.
King found salvation at City of Refuge in Oak Park. She now works there, helping others who aren't so fortunate.
It's so often, it's more so of the people looking to pay for the girls than it is anything at this point.
King was only 15 when she was first picked up on Del Paso Boulevard.
A guy in a doctor's suit. He had put up, I was passing a liquor store. He had put up, and he was just like, do you want to make some money?
Eventually, she started handing her money over to a pimp.
You're trying to meet your quota by the end of the night, so you start taking anything. So then that's when it turns really into a lot of guys and stuff like that, because it's like, okay, you got 20, you're like, I'm gonna take it all because I need to go home tonight. I need to hurry up and get him his money.
Even after her trafficker was convicted, she found she was never really free.
He was in prison for 2 years. As soon as he got out of prison this year, April, the first message I get is from him. And I didn't know what to do. He's going to find me. It's always that the fear of being found or having to go back, because once they find you, you're like, I'm done running.
Did you hear what she said? The fear of them finding you, or if they do find you, you go back. This type of mentality happens in all areas of criminal activity. It's the strongest hold of control and power. And sometimes people don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to get away from it. They could escape it for a while, but sometimes the fear takes them right back to it, because at least they don't have that constant stress or anxiety, and they know what to expect from the lifestyle.
Most traffickers in California are let out of prison early. It's part of the reason Shannon Grove wrote SB 14, but during those hearings, it became apparent not everyone was aware.
With the good time credits and all the criminal justice reform, they have a discounted time in prison.
We're talking about people getting out that should never get out early because of what they did. You've alerted me to something that that we really need to look at.
Good morning. Let me ask you first, where are you currently employed?
Courtney Martin is one of 2 Sacramento County deputy district attorneys assigned to prosecute sex traffickers. She says in the past 5 years, her caseload has tripled.
We've also interviewed suspected or confirmed traffickers.
Martin and her team are getting more convictions, but she says often those sentences handed down just don't stick.
There is this early release that's happening from prison based on the fact that the Department of Corrections has significant power to decide how long a person serves of their sentence. And because of COVID and some other policy changes, defendants are serving a very small amount of the sentence time that they are given by a judge.
KCRA Investigates put in a records request with the California Department of Corrections. In 2022, 246 inmates who were in prison for human trafficking, pimping, or pandering were released. Of all those inmates, the number that served a full sentence, only 2. Of those charged with human trafficking of a minor, which carries a sentence up to 12 years, the average time served, 4 years and 5 months.
You know, when we do have a victim who's cooperative, who wants to see the person who victimized them held accountable, we have to tell them, you know, they're going to go to prison.
You know, chat, one thing I don't believe that people understand about sentencing, especially here in the state that I'm in, you could get a 5-year sentence, right? And you could, by the time you even reach classification and all that stuff, you might not even get to an ID unit before you make parole. You might make parole a year and a half, 2 years and a half into it, and be released to serve the rest of your time on the street. So just because you get these big sentences does not mean that you're going to serve day for day these sentences. And that's what's terrible. You know, people think, well, they got 20, they got 25 years, they got 30, they got 35 years, unless it's aggravated or, you know, they're a habitual criminal and they've been able to enhance it and they've been found a danger to society. Most of the time, a lot of these individuals, and based on their crime when it was committed, with the law changed between the last time that, you know, the law was written this way, now it's been lessened. So they still go under old law, but, you know, future offenders that think, well, they got 20, 25 years for this crime, now it's down to 10. So it's just a terrible thing, you know? It's a terrible thing. And I just wanted to throw that out there because, I mean, a lot of people who've never been locked up or have had family members that are in the system truly understand what the sentencing is all about, you know?
Heard the judge announce this sentence, but you have to know that's not how long they're going to go to prison. In fact, because of the way the policy has changed, we often don't know how long the defendant is actually going to serve.
It's tough, you know, I guess 25 years as a cop, I get good at compartmentalizing it.
Sacramento Police Detective Jason Collins doesn't have time to think about how long suspects are staying in prison. He's simply focused on sending them there.
The guy asks if I'm available. I'm the outgoing message, sure.
Most of his time spent sifting through messages.
What are you looking for? He says FS, which is an acronym for full service, which means like basically full sexual relations. Ask for law enforcement, and then, you know, ask if we can send a picture. And then eventually that's where eventually this person showed up. Other times we go out and do operations, undercover deals where we're chatting, where we're trying to recover juveniles. When the victim shows up at the door, we'll have an undercover officer answer the door, and then when she comes in, the officer will come around and detain her. And then while that's going on, if she was bought by a trafficker, then we'd be dealing with that on the outside.
Collins, along with fellow detectives, pose as male sex buyers looking to lure in teenage girls.
Pretty as simple as it gets. Hi, are you available? Yes. Are you half-hour alcohol okay? Do you have 200? Yes. Okay, great. Are you law enforcement? No. Are you? No.
And they're hoping the girls don't arrive alone.
Typically, if a girl shows up, they're brought there by their trafficker. IV 148 to the surveillance units. We just had one text that she's close, so if you're out and about, get set up. Slow roll by the house, and it's parking around the corner, it looks like. Step out, yeah. Hi, young lady. My name's Jason. I'm a detective with the police department.
Inside, the victims are offered help.
You're not under arrest, okay? I'm not here to make a case against you, okay? We're doing a human trafficking sting.
And outside, officers get what they're looking for.
This guy has a history of human trafficking, and so right now we're just trying to connect the dots to, you know, see if we can, you know, make the arrest.
Another suspect with a history of trafficking, back in the game.
Come on, man. It's a sting operation. She's been talking to an undercover officer. You guys rolled up. You got caught up in the sting. At this point, I'm pretty confident we're going to download your phone. I'm going to find things in here that you are still pimping them out.
Jody National is no stranger to pimping. Twice sentenced for the crime for a total of 11 years. However, he served only a fraction of both prison terms.
You're refusing to own up to your mistakes as a 30-year-old man. You're not a kid anymore, dude.
After this arrest, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to nearly 9 years. But once again, he could earn his way out to an early release.
I know the argument against is that, you know, longer penalties don't deter crimes, but my argument would be, well, you know, longer sentencing keeps that particular person from victimizing more people down the road, because our traffickers never really have done it just once. They've, most of the times in the cases that I've seen, over time, the trafficker has had multiple victims working for them at one point or another.
What do y'all think about that? Do you think longer sentences deter crime, or do you think what he said, you know, as far as, you know, getting them off the street, at least it takes them away from, you know, exploiting these women and young juveniles, you know? Do you believe that longer sentences deter crime? That's a hot topic for a lot of people. You know, that's a hot topic for legislatures and everything else, because recidivism is real. You know, recidivism is real. A lot of times, I was working with parole officers and they would tell me, you know, our supervisors aren't allowing us to file on these people for drug charges or dirty UA. They have to have committed an offense or a violation or have multiple violations before we can actually do something. I don't know how it is in other states, but That's what you really deal with on the front lines. So it's hard to understand if it really does deter crimes or if it just a temporary fix. Is it a band-aid? The issue comes into play with the behavior once inside, and we can't afford to keep them inside the prison. But they just go back. It doesn't seem like it. I don't know. What do you think, AR? Do you think that longer sentences deter crime? Can you type that in the chat?
I told him, who my mom was, and I overheard, the officer say this is a sex trafficking case, and why would you sell your daughter to a police officer? Did you guys think about why a 12-year-old child would be strung out on drugs and prostituting? Hold on, I see an orange rose.
Jeanette Diaz is rediscovering the beauty in life.
Roses symbolize new beginnings to me. I actually have it tattooed right here. And to me, I was one of these little things, well, smaller than this. I was one of these things right here, and I bloomed into a very beautiful and amazing person.
Diaz found out at an early age that life is tough. Her mother was a drug addict and prostitute, unable to care for her.
I got taken away at 5, and I was bounced around to a lot of different foster homes.
She eventually set out to find someone she thought she could trust.
I went to go find my mom when I was 12 on Stockton and Fruit Ridge, and I did find her.
She says her own mother sold her for sex.
My mom put a blindfold on me, and she said just to lay there. And all I remember is taking it off and staring at my mom watch me get raped and not protecting me. I didn't know that all that was bad at first. She was grooming me and just telling me, like, this will help mom be able to get better and get you guys back. So in a way, like, I was being told, I'm helping you to get your kids back because I want to be back with you. I didn't really realize it until she was selling me to an undercover police officer on Stockton Boulevard when they asked me who my mom was. And me, I'm a 12-year-old. I've never been in trouble by the police or anything. I told him, who my mom was, and I overheard, the officer say this is a sex trafficking case, and why would you sell your daughter to a police officer? It really has been, and I'm crying, but I'm healed, like I get healing through doing things like this because people don't speak about it, very often.
The healing only began after Jeanette found someone she could truly count on.
A lot of us as children just wanted somebody. Like, if Maggie was in my life when I was a kid, I probably would have been saved a long time ago.
I first met Jeanette, I want to say 11 or 12 years ago.
Maggie Carell is a state prosecutor who is credited with taking down Backpage, a common sex trafficking website. She's also the one helping to rebuild Diaz's life.
I think she was facing a lot of the trauma that I've seen in other survivors. Many of the victims, either they were sexually abused or sexually assaulted as a child, or they were, sold as sex trafficking victims, as a young teenager.
Carell's now focused on protecting other teens.
We see a lot of children, unfortunately, out of the foster care system. It's a major problem in Sacramento. It's a major problem. I mean, we have too many minors who are out there and too many young women who don't have other choices, who are stuck out there. It's extremely unsafe, and it's a problem.
According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, nearly 29,000 children were reported missing in the U.S. last year. 1 out of every 6 of those are now likely victims of sex trafficking.
The solution is to figure out where the minors want to be and create supportive environments where these kids have a chance to thrive.
Sacramento County's foster care system has been wrought with complaints for years, and now we've learned youth who have already been abused and traumatized are being housed at a former juvenile detention center. a jail.
A place to thrive can be hard to come by for Sacramento's youth. Last year, a KCRA3 investigation revealed children in foster care and CPS custody were being taken here to the Warren E. Thornton or WET Center.
Our investigation uncovered underage drinking, illegal drug use, and sex trafficking. Youth lived in cells, slept on metal frame beds next to metal toilets covered up with wooden boxes.
Following our investigation, the center closed, but the streets are still wide open.
Sometimes we'll recover a juvenile and they'll be back out on the streets in 5-10 minutes after we drop them off.
Colin says it's just one part of a broken system, leading vulnerable children and teens to seek safety with dangerous traffickers.
A lot of our victims come from broken backgrounds, right? Or they grow up in the foster system. And one of the biggest
You know, that's why it's important whenever a child goes missing or whenever we start to cover crimes that have to do with children, we should focus on finding that child as quick as possible, not focusing on the extras that go along with it. Because the first 48 hours are the most important. And if that child is not found, like it said, 1 in 6 of all children are in the sex trafficking industry. I mean, runaways, people that their boyfriends could start pimping them out, just like what you just heard. It's just tragic. All of this is tragic. And if you don't believe it and you think that you're just going to close your eyes to it and it doesn't affect you, so therefore you don't need to watch this or you don't need to understand it, you don't need to get preventative measures to assist anybody that might come to you that said they're being trafficked, what are you going to say? Well, I don't know what to do. Let me go find you somebody. They're going to say, you know what? F you. I'm just going to go back and do what I was doing. I came to you for help and you didn't know what to do. So stir your coffee with that.
Motivators that I see is that the victims have this kind of deep-rooted need for love and affection, and these traffickers know how to exploit that.
A couple of years back, there was a law that passed that said that there's no such thing as a child prostitute. And so they're no longer taking children that are being found in these exploitative situations to juvenile hall. The receiving home has no locked doors. They can't hold them in. It leaves the children relatively on the streets, right? Because if they're not in a position where they can stay or in that mind space to stay, they're just going right back out to their trafficker. When that law was changed, which was a right thing to do, there was no and then what put in place.
So theoretically, you could have the traffickers pull right up to that center.
Basically, yeah.
California lawmakers in the Assembly Public Safety Committee today blocked a bill that would have defined human trafficking of a child a serious felony.
It seemed like a sure thing, but after passing the state Senate, California's child sex trafficking bill came to a halt.
I mean, I'm talking 0 to 17 where the average age is 10. And they would not pass this bill.
6 Democrats sat on the Assembly Public Safety Committee. None backed SB 14.
All evidence has shown that longer sentences don't actually stop things from happening. Instead of investing the resources to take away the economic incentives in these kinds of illicit markets, we invest all of those resources in our $15 billion plus prison infrastructure. And so I can't get there today.
The bill appeared to be dead on arrival until an unexpected moment during an unrelated news conference.
Just to get your thoughts on another off-topic situation. Yesterday, there's some bipartisan frustration with how a bill that would have classified child sex trafficking as a serious felony.
Yeah, it died, in the assembly.
That one question, coming from KCRA Capitol correspondent Ashley Zavala, caused something rarely seen in the California State Assembly.
And he responded, I believe, something to the effect of absolutely, and I've already reached out to Senator Grove.
I appreciate Senator Grove's efforts on this, and wanted to make sure she knew that today. And we'll be following up, and we'll have more to say about that very shortly.
He called. He said, I'm disappointed. I go, me too. And he was like, I'm engaging. I'm like, engage away, sir.
I've never seen this scenario happen. It was so rare for the governor to so publicly support a Republican's proposal. And not only that, but to ensure that this proposal was going to make it through the finish line before the end of the legislative session.
And it did.
And it did.
Following intense pressure from state leaders and public outrage, a key group of lawmakers changing their minds today on a proposed child sex trafficking law.
2 months after that initial vote, and with the tide clearly on SB 14's side, another vote was in order.
All debate having ceased, this measure is eligible for a unanimous roll call.
This time, it passed.
Seeing none, ayes 39, no 0. Congratulations, Senator Grove, for getting your legislation to the governor's desk.
I thank the media for engaging, thousands upon thousands of Californians that engaged in this process. And I think they pulled back the curtain just a little bit.
That is so awesome. I believe that other people need to take the same stand and vote and vote and vote for these things to make a difference in people's lives. If you don't believe in that, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, we agree to disagree, right?
SB 14 went into effect January 1st.
And without Ashley Zavala at a governor's press conference engaging the governor on that conversation, that bill would have never been heard of again.
How rare is that?
Oh, I don't think it hadn't happened in 25 years.
Looks like he's been out of prison for just a few months now, and he's already back here trying to, again, talk to sex workers.
I have a message for those who would traffic children in the state of California. Leave. Leave now. When the police bring you into the courthouse gates, we will be ready.
4 months after SB 14 became law, Courtney Martin was in the courtroom taking it for a test drive. The first such trial in the state.
How difficult or easy is it for a pimp to recruit a sex worker?
Prosecutors say Xavier Collins was selling a 15-year-old for sex. After 4 weeks of testimony and 2 days of deliberations,
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Xavier Atu Collins, guilty of the crime of causing a minor to engage in a commercial sex act.
advocates say it's a big step to help eliminating the problem, but it's only a first step in what is proving to be an extremely long journey.
The only way that there will be a decrease in trafficking in Sacramento is if we focus on preventing people from becoming buyers. The reason why there are children for sale is because there are people who are seeking to devour and purchase children and women.
Occupied. Hey, stay in your car. Stay in your car. Hands. What's up with the girls you were yelling at over at Hovette? Bro, I was behind you. I saw you hollering about the chicks.
There's no reason to be on parole, be a registered sex offender for human trafficking, and rolling into a parking lot that's known for commercial sex trafficking.
Many believe stopping trafficking starts with stopping demand. That includes this suspect with a past conviction for selling women.
You're giving the guy that's with the 13-year-old 40 years, but you're not giving the guy that's and picking up the 14, 13-year-old life. You're not giving him nothing.
So let me ask you this.
So I don't understand what the you human trafficking people are out here for.
Then give me the information so I can go hammer those dudes.
I can't give you it. If you want to stop human trafficking and little girls being put up and down these streets, if you want to really stop that, you arrest tricks. You arrest who demands it. You don't arrest who sells it. Because whoever sells it, they cannot sell it
Are they businessmen?
unless the person that buys it.
That's the problem too.
You don't
grab the rest of the stuff. We're not gonna.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you can hear me now a little bit. California is a hotbed for human trafficking, and with the passage of SB 1414, we want to send a very clear message that not one more child will be sold or suffer at the hands of those that seek to exploit our children.
On the success of SB 14, Grove is now going after the buyers, introducing a new bill, SB 1414, which would make it a felony to purchase sex with a minor.
The message is that it takes two to facilitate a sexual activity for a minor, the seller and the buyer. We addressed the seller last year. We're addressing the buyer this year.
I myself, this is my missing poster.
Unfortunately, Sawan Vaden knows the pain caused by sex trafficking far too well.
I was trafficked at 12, kidnapped off Stockton Boulevard.
Like many of Cash's staff, Vaden too walked through Cash's door in the darkest of places. She too was in search of light.
I love you and I believe in you. You are amazing and wonderfully made.
For Vaden and the other survivors working here, the future is brighter than ever.
I used to work right on this was my favorite block where we're actually sitting right now. So it's so funny to say that I used to work where I work now. I know my past doesn't define me. With the help of Cash and the expungement clinic they hold, I was able to receive a full expungement. Judge Brown, who granted my expungement, he says, "Look at you, Angela 2.0. And I couldn't agree anymore with him because that's what I feel like, Angela 2.0, the real Angela.
There is hope, there is redemption, there is like a light at the end of the tunnel.
When you look at those pictures and you see the transformation, how do you describe it?
I feel like I literally got my life back. There's a feeling when you've given up on yourself and you're just being. And every step that I took away from that, I began to become. And I feel like I'm excited to find out what else that I have to learn in life. Ooh, it's just a burn.
Jeanette Diaz is constantly working to forget the stings of her past.
I was branded by a pimp, so I was their property. I wanted to cut my whole hand off at a point.
And as the die continues to dissolve, so does the nightmare she once endured.
Knowing that I don't have to have these anymore, knowing that I can look down is me. I was lost since I was 12 years old. I was never me. I was never me. And now I'm me.
Diaz.
That is so sad, y'all. That is so sad. I don't know if you remember being 12 years old, but can you imagine being taken from your surroundings and thrust into an adult world by your own flesh and blood, and then never understanding who you were or why that was happening to you, and then being branded like property and passed around, never understanding what was going on, and then one day finding freedom. I believe that she's still probably young in her mind because of the trauma. She's probably just learning to relive again, to rethink, to be alive again, you know? Trauma kills the soul.
As is writing a new story.
That's not all. It's when she calls me 2 weeks in to tell me that she's falling in love with herself.
And it's a story of success. She now works helping other survivors at 3 Strands Global. The organization recently opened its new downtown facility giving women another opportunity to find safe haven.
My dream is to honestly share my story until I die so that I can help. Even if it helps 10 people, I will be so grateful to even help those 10 people.
We're appreciative of you and everybody else who does this work. So thank you very much.
Understanding how sex trafficking exists is overwhelming. How do you end it?
Human trafficking is a big problem in California because of the laws. And that's really an issue. How do we fix that?
It's easier said than done.
14 got a lot of traction from the public because once the public was made aware of it, because I mean, we tried to change that bill over a dozen times to make it a violent felony. But once the public was made aware of it and word got out there, the whole narrative changed.
Some of the big legal changes that have allowed this have been voter pass propositions. As we know, often the real effects of those voter pass propositions don't necessarily
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for watching Escaping the Blade. This is obviously a very important topic, and we wanted to continue the conversation with some local experts here. You saw them all in the documentary. Sawan Vaden, who is the executive director of CASH, Jason Collins from the Sacramento Police Department, State Senator Shannon Grove, you saw her. She introduced SB 14 and got that passed, also SB 1414. Sacramento Sheriff Jim Cooper, and then Courtney Martin from the District Attorney's Office. And let me start with you, Senator Grove. SB 1414 is where we sort of left off the documentary, and you were heading into committee. Can you tell us where SB 1414 stands right now?
So when we went into committee, there were hostile amendments forced on us. We wanted to cover everyone from, all minors included in the bill. And we also didn't want the 10-year age gap between the perpetrator and the victim. We also wanted to register sex offenders on the second offense or for repeat offenders. They hostilely took over the bill. They inserted amendments that were pretty bad. The bill is now in appropriations, where my joint author is the chair of appropriations, and she's not happy with the language in the bill now, and we've submitted amendments to go back to where it was before they hostily took it over in public safety.
Do you foresee that passing this year?
I would hope so. I don't understand, Jason, and I don't think any of us up here understand why it's so hard to protect minors from sex trafficking or selling or buying children for sex. We took the amendments to eliminate adults, which adults are still being sold every single day as well. But it's very difficult for some reason to get bills like this out of the building.
And Sawan, when we spoke, the one thing that stands out, lots of things stand out about our conversation, but you said you have to go after the buyers. Explain to me why that's so important.
Well, it's so important because as long as there are people who want to buy children and women and people, there'll be people for sale. And so it's the demand that drives sex trafficking. There's no way it would be possible if there weren't someone to purchase.
It was actually so when we went to visit CASH afterwards, after the original bill was killed in the Public Safety Committee, we went to visit CASH, and they actually told us about the demand side of it. Not being from the industry or having that background, you learn from people like Sawan that give you these ideas, and that's why we ran 1414 this year.
But you have to make it painful enough for the buyers not to want to do it, and that's with penalties to do that. They're still out there day in and day out. We've done operations. We've arrested over 30 people in one evening coming out to buy. So unless you impact the buyers, it will not change.
What would you like to see, Sheriff? In a perfect world, if you had a magic wand, how do we get rid of this?
Separate penalties. And think about this. Senator Grove's bill passed. It's been tried many, many other times. Why did it pass now? Californians are fed up with the laws and what's going on. It is a movement right now, and they want things changed, and it's not okay. And it's so hard. That's an easy bill. Human trafficking of a child should be a felony. It always should have been a violent crime. It never was. So what changed now? Just the whole crime issue has bubbled up where it resonates with voters. So it's going to be a come to Jesus this November with the voters and criminal justice.
And obviously part of when we talk about laws, SB 14 was passed. Courtney had the chance to, what we think, try the first case in the state. We can't talk about the case because it's still in the process. We still need to wait for sentencing. But Courtney, can you talk about what sort of message that sends to people out there, the people who want to traffic a minor or even just traffic an adult in general?
Yeah. Well, we know that traffickers are well aware of what the penalties are when it comes to minors. We see all the time their traffickers find out that someone is a child and they say, I'm not going to mess with you because I know that the penalties are significant when it comes to trafficking minors. I'm going to target an adult where I think maybe there's more leniency, which is a problem itself. But traffickers are well aware of these penalties. And what I think is really significant about having the tools that SB 14 gave us is that over the past 5 years that I've been involved in prosecuting human trafficking, I've seen many traffickers who have prior convictions for trafficking who are back out on the streets, and I'm prosecuting them again. And so making trafficking of a minor a strike means that when those people come back, they will get double the penalty that they got originally. Right? And so it really, it gives us a tool when it comes to the future prosecution, particularly of these traffickers, because the reality is they are, in most cases, going to get out of prison. Many of them return to these types of crimes, and we want to certainly have their penalties on that second time reflect their prior conduct.
And Jason, when we talk about this and the restrictions in the law, going back to when the law changed for minors no longer being held as prostitutes, which is the correct call there. Obviously, they're victims and they don't know what they're doing. How difficult is your job when you go and investigate these cases?
Well, when it comes to dealing with victims, let me say this, victims of sex trafficking are probably the most difficult victims that we deal with in law enforcement across the board. There's a lot of factors that, set up these roadblocks when we're trying to deal with them. Fear of their traffickers, brainwashing, manipulation by their traffickers not to cooperate with law enforcement. Also, just their general distrust with law enforcement, like if, they've been arrested for prostitution or something like that before. So it makes it very difficult. The law, as far as dealing with juveniles, yes, like they should not be criminalized at all. But at the same time, there's other tools, mechanisms in place where we can interview these young kids with like welfare and institution codes and stuff like that.
So I'm just going to throw this out. Sheriff, go ahead.
But it makes it tougher, and that's the issue. The legislature passed those laws, decriminalized child prostitution, and I argued against that on the floor. I was in the legislature at that time. Decriminalized loitering, and then you can't interview juveniles. And that's really the big issue. Everyone's after the trafficker. That's the golden goose. But how many traffickers do you really get? That's the tough part, because these guys use juveniles. Number one, juveniles, hey, it's not a crime. You can't be arrested. They can't talk to you. So walk away from the cops. And they teach these young girls that. So we've got to change that narrative and really hold them accountable. And there has to be a balance. They're victims, yes. But sometimes to get to the trafficker, there's that communication between him and the victim, the girls. And there has to be a balance. Because it's interesting, because some jurisdictions are hands off. They don't want to do anything with the girls. And it's a marked difference from Sacramento County, the prostitution you see. Why is that? We've got to impact it somehow, and the laws have really hampered us and hurt us in how we do that. But like I said, FBI has a task force, Homeland Security, SACPD does, we do, DA's office is trying to stand up. Everyone's chasing that trafficker, and the number of arrests just aren't there. It has exploded on the scene in Sacramento. It is a major problem with human trafficking.
So just like Coop said earlier, sorry, Jason, but just like Coop said earlier about stiffer penalties, and you have to have penalties. Right now to solicit a minor child or engage in solicitation with a minor, and Coop does best where they're actually communicating and thinking they're going to go meet up with a 10 or 11-year-old. But that act of solicitation right now is a misdemeanor, punishable by 2 days up to 1 year in jail. And so if we get SB 1414 passed, it'll be a felony across the board, and you'll go to prison. I want you to do prison time if you're engaging in purchasing sex from a minor.
So Swan, how do you make sure that victims aren't swept up in this if that's what happens?
I would just like to go back.
You know, the sad part, guys, is these individuals, a lot of them are not rehabilitatable. Individuals that have sex crimes or they target kids, you know, a lot of them are not rehabilitatable. They have a way of thinking that is distorted, and you can send them to therapy, you can send them to treatment, you can send them to a bunch of things. You can keep them monitored, you can do all this stuff, but in reality, that urge is an addiction in itself. And the individuals that are buying these children, you have to understand that it's just not surface level things. I believe that the more educated that we are on certain situations that happen in our world on a daily basis, the better off we'll be when it comes to preventative measures. And it starts with the home front. We can't make a huge dent in what's already broken. We can't make a big dent in what's already broken. But it starts at home. It starts in schools. It starts in, you know, after school activities. It starts with trying to get the best people in the position to not exploit these children, because money is a huge factor. You know, it makes even the most honorable people deceived or convictions. And that's been proven time and time again. Otherwise, we wouldn't have entertainers that are frolicking um, to young children, grooming them. You know, and it's terrible to believe that, you know, you take the trafficker out, you're gonna solve the problem. Um, so you have to understand that whenever you're dealing with such things, preventative measures oftentimes are the foundation for change. It starts at the home front, you know, it starts at the home front. And we have to be mindful of other people's children as well. Just because they're not our own children does not mean that we still don't look out for other people's children. And the sad part is, once they're groomed, they experience the Stockholm syndrome because the individual that's trafficking them a lot of times convinces them that they're not a bad person, they're just helping them somehow. So, I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. I know it wasn't easy to talk about. It's never easy to talk about, but it needs to be talked about. Um, we can't bury our head in the sand and act like it's somebody else's problem just because you don't have children, just because your children are grown. You might have grandchildren that are coming up. And as you heard, there was a 10-year-old in this story, a 12-year-old that was being groomed and used for prostitution. And it's not always urban areas that do this. There's teachers sleeping with students. There's administrators, businessmen, You name it. It's all over. It's all over. So to say that it's not a big deal, you might do an inventory on your belief system. If it's not a big deal to you, what is? What is a big deal to you? A stupid murder trial that you have no dog in the fight? That's a big deal to you? It means more to you than an innocent child potentially being trafficked, abducted, taken, forced into labor or a form of slavery? I hope that you really evaluate your moral values and beliefs. Like I said, I'm not the moral compass of YouTube. But I can tell you this. Together we can make a change, no matter how small. You can volunteer in your community, or even start one of these places that help these people that are caught feeling like they have no way out. It starts with one. It starts with one. If you can save one, how many people will that one impact? We all impact people's lives, whether we believe it or not, whether we don't get out in society, you know, we can make a change. We can make a change. And I hope that you believe that, because it's needed for our next generation. Otherwise, it's just going to be looked at as normalized behavior, and a lot of innocent children are going to suffer. They're already suffering. Every day, they're suffering. Every day. And don't even get me started if you pay for sex and you're on these platforms. It's none of my business what you do with your life. But you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem. None of my business what you do. But it is a crime to sleep with a minor, to solicit a minor online. You know? So, once again, hit the like button if you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much for being in the chat and speaking freely and openly and being respectful. Until next time, Maestro, cue the music.